you have an endless supply of creativity. So it's really a story, this life of abundance, not a story of scarcity. And if you really believe the story of abundance, it also helps you to rest. When you are the most rested is when you're the most creative and the most innovative.
This is a fun episode because I was joined by my friend Keith Case, who is a pastor artist. Yeah, you'll see what I mean when we get into the episode. He has a master's in both counseling and divinity. He's building 2 church communities and has a really interesting leadership style and thoughts around creativity, collaboration, and what it takes to build thriving cities. This was a fun conversation. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Keith, thank you so much for joining me today. So good to see you.
Great to be here with you.
I am so excited about this conversation because you're such an interesting human. We met a couple months ago. Someone introduced us. And isn't it funny how the universe works? Someone introduced us, and then
Yeah.
you were hosting the Creative Mornings event
Yep.
at your church. And I thought, we're meant to be friends. We're meant to
Yeah.
be connected.
Yeah. And then he had like a 2-second, or we talked on the phone or email or something, and you brought me the Matthew Kelly book, The Dream
The
Manager,
Dream Manager,
right?
yep.
Which was totally right up my alley. And I've shared it with people, and it's great. It fits in so well with like stuff that we're doing. So fun.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. All right. So, Keith, you have such an interesting body of work. If someone were to ask you, give a little high level overview on how you would describe your body of work, what would you say?
I mean, it might sound a little like, I don't know, too big, but I really feel like I help build cities or help cities thrive or help cities flourish. My studies have been in coming in and assessing how a city is healthy or unhealthy and trying to celebrate the healthy parts. And then what do we need to do about the unhealthy parts? All of that will include like being, a lot of creativity in that process of trying to figure out how do we both celebrate and how do we address the things that need to be addressed. It's interesting. So if I'm like flying on a plane or whatever, I can tell people about that. And the conversation will be like, oh, that's fascinating. And it'll lead into all these things about stuff we're involved with, like the Tarpon Cove here locally, the Tarpon Cove projects, where we're helping manage these islands that are in the Lake Worth Lagoon behind our church. And it'll involve art showcases that we do, the concerts, all this kind of stuff. And then towards the end of the conversation, I'll say something like, and I get to do all this as a pastor. And then they'll be like, oh, that's cool. But if I led with the pastor comment at the beginning, there's too much baggage there. So I usually avoid the pastor part until the end. But I'm also a mental health counselor in that space. So
Yeah, you have such an interesting career. And yeah, it is kind of funny. If we were not introduced, like when someone said, oh, you have to meet my pastor friend, there was just like a different image of who I thought I would be connecting with. And then when we got to chat, I was like, oh, you're a pastor, you're like a community advocate, you are an entrepreneur, you have so many different things that you are excited about. And it's really cool what you are doing here. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're working on and what you're most excited about right now?
yeah, almost 10 years ago, we started a church here in downtown West Palm Beach that was essentially based around the idea of, can we build a community out of vulnerability? I know Brene Brown has become, Miss Queen of Vulnerability. She's not the first person to talk about it, obviously. But when I went through my divinity masters, I also got a master's in counseling. And the counseling part is really where I learned how to be a pastor, or I would say how to care for people and love people. So we tried to start a church out of like really what I learned from counseling and just connecting with people. And the people we ended up connecting with in downtown West Palm Beach were a lot of creatives and a lot of artists. And if you're trying to do that kind of work in the spirit of vulnerability, that means you're keeping your hands open. And you might have some principles that you bring to the table in these conversations, some ideas. But if you're really truly open-handed, you in some ways don't know where this thing's going. So it's been like a wild creative process of like, okay, like, all right, that's where this is going. Like one of the things that happened within the first like couple of months is half the people that we gathered together started dating. And the control part of me like started flaring up, going, "Oh my God," freaking out because what if they break up or whatever, this whole thing is sunk. But it didn't happen. I just kept the hand, tried to keep my hands open. And over the course of the next 5, 6 years, really saw this creative, organic body come together. And it was the most creative season of my life ever. Like, I've never been around so much creativity. The church grew to about 150 people in worship. We probably had 15 bands, some of them on tour that would go off on tour for 3 months. We had actresses and actors who would go to New York and come back. Some were performing on the malts here locally. We had our own recording label that started, was putting out music, songwriting classes. We were hosting concerts around the city for the DDA, the Downtown Development Authority. It was just like, and I mean, and literally somebody was writing a soundtrack to all of it at the same time. COVID and a couple other things put like a pretty big dent in that work. And, the whole housing situation, the rise of housing prices, it really just scattered that community. Coming out on the backside of it, that community was really broken apart. There was probably only like 15 people when we came back to have a church service. If we had 500 people in our greater community, there was like 100 left after COVID. And then the church that we rent from, Memorial Presbyterian Church, said, "Hey, would you consider being our pastor too?" And this church is 100 years old, where the other one is full of artists and kind of risky people. The 101-year-old church is like, CFOs, lawyers, doctors, like risk averse people. And they hired me to come in and like pastor. And now there's this conversation there, and they are, for a sleepy little Presbyterian church, kind of having a revival. Like, and by that I just mean like there's a new energy in this church that's happened. I've been there for 3 years, and like really beautiful things are happening. It is the most diverse that the church has ever been, the most eclectic. It's growing, and all these kind of like markers that churches use, like people are getting baptized, all that kind of stuff. But part of behind the scenes is this conversation about these two churches potentially becoming one. So
Wow.
the way I explained it to people was, I'm doing like premarital counseling, and we'll see like if they decide to get married or not. But it's tapping into like everything I've been equipped in, all my life experience, to see, how this thing all fits together, if it fits together.
Why why do you think they felt compelled to ask you to lead that church, being that you were over here with the arts and all the
Mhm.
artists and then wanting you to come in?
Um, I think I checked enough boxes. Like I'm in the same denomination they're a part of. It's called Eco. There's enough kind of like respectable people who like me, maybe. And I was trained by a guy in New York City named Tim Keller. He's pretty reputable, and um, a lot of people respect his work, and it had a huge impact on me. And that's where I got so, he's part of my journey into my understanding of cities and why cities are so significant, and why cities, the real idea of cities is like it's the potential for the most creativity, whether good or bad. You can, you have all these, images of God, like image bearers, if you will. You have all these artists and all these resources in this confined space. And so you have this potential for like incredible things to happen. Um, and I think they knew that if they didn't, then the church was just going to keep like slowly dying, which is kind of the thing for most of the, even though our church isn't like a mainline denomination, it was a part of a mainline denomination for a long time. And that's just kind of the course that they were on. So it's like, let's send it. Let's see what happens, And it was honestly I think some of the older people who were there who just were open to new possibilities, So I commend them for their courage.
Yeah. That's so cool. So did anyone break up after they started dating and cause any issues?
I mean, we definitely have had things that have come up that people's fears and different things on both sides. I mean, there's definitely the church at night would probably be considered more progressive, just uh, politically or socially. And then the one in the morning is surprisingly more progressive than I thought, but it would just maybe seem like it's not. And I think that's kind of the risk piece. And I think there was a few people that probably left the church in the morning, but it wasn't like a lot. It was, they left before I got there when once the church decided they were going to bring me in. And I'll say that what I have seen and experienced from the church in the morning is that they have really leaned into the whole vulnerability thing, and it's taken time. I mean, to really do that work, people need to feel safe. And I kept saying when I first came, because there were some trust issues for sure before I came in that still existed, not just between them and, things that had happened maybe with other leaders, but between them and the church. And I just kept saying to them, transformation happens at the speed of trust, or change happens at the speed of trust. So, like, let's take time to get to know each other. And, I've probably taken, I probably took 2.5 years before I really started kind of speaking to vision and speaking to like things that I felt like were really significant, but it was out of relationship. So my leadership style is very unique, I think, in the church space because I'm not like a hierarchy leader. Somebody said one time have more of like a European leadership style, but more of like a flat leader model. And vision very much for me comes out of relationships with people. So once people started feeling safer with me, then people started opening up more. And then we started getting to the secret sauce, the magic stuff, that you
Yeah.
can really create with.
Have there been some surprising collaborations that you've seen between the 2 churches or the people within the church to create something?
Yeah, I think one of the things that was really crazy, I mean, it was really brutal too, it's hard, is there was a guy who played guitar at both churches, a guy named Chris Wood. And Chris was a pillar of the music scene in West Palm Beach. I mean, he was playing at Respectables when he was like in diapers, probably. But he was a guy that knew everybody in West Palm Beach, who was anybody who played music. Um, and at both churches, when people would come in the door, he went out of his way to go and say hi to them, to talk to them, to welcome them. And he ended up getting cancer when he was a dad, 2 boys, wife. He ends up getting cancer and he passes away. Both churches come together though before he died to do like a benefit concert for him at Respectables. And all his friends that don't ever go to church come to that, event. And it's continued every year. I think this year may be the first year that they're taking a break from it, but they call it like Woodfest. Chris Wood was his name. And, it's like in the midst of like tragedy, but it really served very early on to bring both of the communities together in a really powerful way, you know,
Yeah.
and in a creative way. Since then, there's been other things, but that was kind of the beginning of it, where it's like, whoa,
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's a beautiful story.
yeah,
And that's when people it's so beautiful to see that's when people come together and we can like put our differences aside or our frustrations or challenges or anything that we're going through and
hmm
then create something beautiful in someone
hmm
else's name or for a bigger
hmm
purpose.
hmm
It must be so interesting to be building what you're building and have your hands in so many parts of the community, not only in the church,
hmm
but just with all the other people that you get to collaborate. Is
hmm
there what have you learned or what's something that you've learned over the last 6 months or become, like, really obsessed with that you just are thinking about all the time?
yeah. I mean, so I was saying how like for me, vision comes out of relationship. So as I get to know people, and when I was at Providencia, I knew everybody was an artist. Like the majority of people, I knew they were artists. Um, And when I came to Memorial, I that was not the first thing you see. You see like people like kind of buttoned up, suit and tie, not suits, but like ties or maybe like a buttoned up shirt. These, they look more like the white collar worker. And then I get to start getting to know them. And the lady playing violin up front was the violinist for Dashboard Confession. And then I just keep getting to know all these stories, and everybody's an artist, everybody's a creative, and I'm like, what the heck? And then Demetrius Klein, which is a dance company here locally, fascinating dance company. They use our space now like twice a week to practice, and then they use it quarterly for performances and stuff. We had designated a venue in our space after Chris Wood. And so now we have a space called Wood Hall. We had started doing concerts there. We did film premieres. We did art showcases. We've done some fashion stuff there. I want to do more fashion stuff. And I also was going to these meetings for our neighborhood. Our whole neighborhood is being redeveloped and envisioned. It's being called the Cultural Quarter. So from Belvedere to Okeechobee, from the water to the train tracks, it's this new neighborhood with a new vision. And I was just listening to the stories and getting to know those people, getting to know the people in our community. And I was like, man, all this creativity that's in our church needs to come out from behind the shadows and like come up to the front. And part of it was my own journey with my own creativity, my own understanding. For me, really seeing God as an artist was this big deal, and seeing everybody else as artists. And this idea of our church we're right behind the Norton Art Museum. We are directly across the street from PBA's dance, theater, music program. My wife has a partnership with the Ann Norton Sculpture Garden, which is directly connected back to our church. Worth Avenue is across the water. If you flew straight across from us, we have all these kids coming from Dreyfus, which is one of the top art schools in the country. Just all these incredible deals. We have guilds that have started. And I said, we're going to put this stuff front and center. And this idea of our church becoming a local art house for the neighborhood is this thing that I've been obsessed with, and we've had events where like dance companies, since January, we've had like 4 dance companies come where they practice at the Kravis, but the show was at our church. Or when the Norton just brought their resident in, this artist resident from Mexico, she's a photographer, and we got connected through the Norton leaders, through the people there. And so I was able to go and do like a show or go and do a tour for her gallery with her, and then go hang out afterwards. And then the next morning took her and her partner who was visiting to brunch down to Lake Worth to drop them off at the beach. But we spent like 3 hours together. And one of my hopes is that we will be hosting residents, and we not only for the Norton, but we can have our own residency program. The kitchen down there that I hope will be taken over by a startup catering company. So any catering companies out there that are starting up, any creatives that need free space, the only thing you have to pay back is preparing a meal for about 80 people a week. But it can be simple, it could be rice and beans, chicken, whatever. But we would love to see something like that happen, and then a culinary school come out of it. We're just trying to leverage every square inch of our space for the arts, to be an incubator and to be a support system, because we believe it's so important for the flourishing of the city.
Yes. That's one of the
So,
things I love about West Palm is I love the focus on the arts. I love that we have a space where people are making music, and I love walking around and seeing all the murals, and
mhm,
it's just you can just really feel that kind of vibe. And you know what, Keith? I love that you shared that you go from this one church with all the artists and then the other church with all the executives and professionals, but everyone is creative in their unique way. And I think a lot of times people think creativity means you're a writer or a dancer or a
mhm,
photographer or
mhm,
you're a sculptor, you're doing something like that. Whereas everyone has their own form of creativity. And for some people, it's cooking. And for some people, it's the way that they parent or how they
yeah,
teach. And so I
yep,
love that
mm,
having more of a presence around the conversation around creativity I think it invites more people to try something, and now you're giving them a platform to actually participate
Mhm,
and help them creatively in all these different areas, and some that they might have
mhm,
already explored and come back to, and some that they might never have explored, and now they get a chance to kinda dip their
mhm,
toe into it, which is cool. In creating anything, I think
mhm.
one of the challenging parts, especially when people have a lot of ideas, right? You're an
Yeah.
idea guy, you have tons of different ideas,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
I can only imagine, right? You only have so much time and resources and energy
Yeah.
towards something. So how
Mhm.
do you decide what's worth creating? What's worth focusing your time on?
Yeah, I mean, the really simple answer is we like just throw a bunch of stuff against the wall and then it's like kind of like the what sticks part. But how I know if it sticks is I used to there's two ways it happens. One, it happens by me spending time getting quiet and getting still, which I need a community of people around me to help me do that. It sounds funny, but I need to be with people to help me slow down enough to be still and then stuff percolates from there. But the other way it happens is I'm with someone like yourself. We're having a conversation like this. And the longer the conversation goes, the more that we get into like depths of things. There's a quote by a guy named Parker Palmer who says that the soul is like a wild animal. It's resilient, but if you want to get a glimpse of it, you can't go crashing into the woods. You have to go and sit with it for a couple hours. Sitting with people and kind of getting to that point where you've lost track of time and now you're talking about things that you didn't even realize you needed to talk about. And you're getting into this like authentic, very deep and authentic space. And I get a glimpse of somebody's soul in that. And then I've done that with somebody else. And then I like, these two people need to meet, these two souls need to connect, and so I will connect them and, just throw a little bit of timber or like a little bit of gas on there. And if a fire starts, I'm like, okay, this is something's here. And so it's very, for me, it's like very organic though. It's, let's like rub the sticks together, see if the fire, if there's some smoke, if we get a little bit of fire and then, if it starts burning, like we know there's something here. Otherwise, it's like, okay, well, did nothing happen. So it's a lot of experimentation. Um, and the sustainability piece is also a big part of it. Thank God I have some people around me that say, no, that's not going to work. Like very early on. Right. But, yeah, it's a process and it definitely sets you up to see like the whole opening of your hands and this could fail, like, and it's
Mhm.
okay. It's a part of the
Yeah.
process.
What are some of the biggest challenges that, because I think that is every creative deals with, is this gonna work? Sometimes we have imposter syndrome or we feel like we
Mhm,
have to do everything perfectly before we get started. What are
mhm.
some of the commonalities that you see among the creators that you work with? What are some of the challenges that they come to you with?
I think like and this is where I get into more of like the counseling stuff, right? A lot of times I hear people are like overwhelmed. Certainly for me, that's one of my hardest things is if I get overwhelmed, it's really hard for me to be creative because it's just, I don't feel like I can really connect. But I work with people, doing therapy and I work with professionals and artists and everything. And um, getting into their narratives, like what are the narratives that kind of drive them is really helpful work. So you'll hear these narratives like performance narrative, or you'll hear a narrative like, um, I have to do this alone. There's all these different narratives we carry with us from our childhood, and they can help you like to create and be like driven and like do a lot, but they also end up kind of backfiring eventually because they're not the most healthy narratives, right? If you're like, I am what I create, then that's your whole worth is built around that instead of you having some intrinsic value. So I end up leading people into what they would call like inner child work. And part of what I'm trying to do is, or facilitate, is help them reconnect with the kid in them. And when they do that, what did that child need that child didn't get. So I start introducing this idea of an ecosystem. Everybody has this needs an ecosystem to flourish. What are the things that we're missing in their ecosystem? And they can start naming those things. They can start grieving those things. And then they can start actually, in a way, as an adult, giving those things to that child. So, for example, if you grew up in a family where emotions were not talked about, I'm not saying that was my family, but if you grew up in a family where emotions weren't talked about and there was like emotional neglect, and then you grow up as an adult and you're not connected to your emotions, part of your work in therapy is to go back, be connected to what that kid was feeling when he was going through what he was going through. And then as a grown adult now, staying connected to my emotions every day is a way that I heal the neglect, right? So I'm not going to do the same thing that was done to me, to myself. I'm going to choose a different path. What's fascinating about that is one of my friends is a writer for Hyperallergic magazine. It's a big art publication. And every once in a while, I'll send him stuff that my kids do and send him paintings, and I'll ask him, is he the next Picasso or is she the next, great artist? And he'll say, oh man, fascinating work. I love what they did here. I love what they did there. And he'll say, the biggest challenge for them is like that they don't lose, that they don't become a performer, that they don't try to start creating stuff that people like, but they
Mhm.
just stay connected to that child, to that playful child. And from a theological standpoint, Jesus has this crazy invitation where he says, come to me, all, well, he invites the little kids to come to me. And he says, like, unless you become like a child, like you have no part in my kingdom. As a fascinating thing, because when people get connected with that child and they start getting, caring for that child, and in a sense, that child is set free, they realize that there's this kid in them that just wants to play. And there's this kid in them that is so curious and is so creative. And I mean, you remember being bored in your room and just created stuff.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of my work with trying to help people, get set free, if you will.
Okay. I love this conversation because I just well, 2 things. One, what an interesting statement that he made because I've seen a lot of creators, and I think this is great for them. They've actually come to their community and they've built really big followings, and they've come to the community and said, "Hey, you guys, I don't like this content anymore. I
Yep.
actually do not like creating videos around this particular topic. I want to
Yep.
be more creative. I have these other
Yep.
ideas, but my challenge is you come to my channel to watch these videos. And so I'm just
Yep.
letting you know you might want to leave because I'm going to now pursue more of what I'm interested in and what I'm curious about and
Yeah.
what I really was what I started doing when I started. I don't know.
Yep.
I think that can be really challenging, especially as well, I've talked to some authors who have written books and they're wildly successful.
Hmm.
And it's one of them said to me, "Oh my gosh, you think writing your first book is hard and then you become successful. Try writing your 10th book and now you have an expectation from the people from the
Yeah.
reader."
Yep.
And that can be really challenging and stressful. And it's
Yeah.
okay. So it's almost like it's stressful to start creating. It's stressful to kind of like grow into who
Hmm.
you are
Hmm.
and then be able to have the freedom to change. In fact, this goes back to music, right? Like when people talk about, "Oh, I went and saw this new band and they played all new music, but I want to hear all the old stuff." But the musicians
Yeah.
are like,
Yeah. This is why I didn't go see Pearl Jam in Miami when they just played. Because
"Really?
yeah, I would have wanted to hear the old stuff. But and this is something that comes up in therapy is I'll be working with these people who are creatives and in the creative space, and they've worked their way up until management or like, CEO status or whatever, and they miss the creative process. And I'm like, well, just go back. And then it's like, but I won't make as much money and I'm like, but man, your heart is dying. And now they have like no margin because they're just so busy with doing what they're doing. So that brings up the whole, that's where we start getting into the narrative. Like, what is this really about for you? And even from the beginning, like, why am I being creative? Like, what is this? And I think I think for me, when I was younger, I had enough of fame to realize that it's not what I really wanted. And, and I found like a different source of wealth than money. And that was this connection, like the magic that happens when you see a soul and your soul is connected. And that's like, and I don't just mean that in some like, like spiritual, like whatever way, but I mean it in like in the most like human way that two humans get to see, oh, that's another real human right there. Wow. The masks are kind of taken off and like you're in the struggle too. And you have the longings and you're like in the pain. And that kind of connection to me is like fire.
Yeah, it's the man in the arena. It's
Yeah.
that's what it is, like, that I
Yeah.
just think about that quote all the time. In fact, I have that quote, um, in my kitchen because
Yeah.
it's so true, like, you want to be with other creative people that know what it takes.
Mhm.
So, in what area were you famous?
Well, I grew up in a small town, Chattanooga, Tennessee, and by famous in Christian circles, I kind of had like a radical conversion experience, if you will, where when I became a Christian, parents said things like, "No way, not until I see it." I was blacklisted from being able to hang out with their kids, and then I just had a lot of people come around me and pour it into me, and then I became a leader in my city for a Bible study that was for all the high schools and it's in the South, Bible Belt, Chattanooga, Tennessee. And if I was out eating, I would be eating lunch with somebody and somebody would come up and talk. Like I couldn't go out to eat with somebody and not have somebody come up and talk to me. And some people might think that was like, oh, that's awesome. You're being but it was like exhausting for me. So I wasn't, and I was like in my high school, um, I'd become pretty popular or whatever. So it wasn't something I wanted to chase.
Yeah.
So I wasn't like on Broadway or anything. I wasn't, that kind of thing, but it was just, I had enough taste of it to realize I would rather have friends than fame. I would rather be known, truly known by some people than known by the masses.
Yeah. It's so true when you have people in your life who truly like you, like,
Hmm. Yeah.
truly they love you, they like you, they want you to win, and I think the
Uh-huh.
older that you get, it can be challenging to find those true people. You
Yes.
can have a lot of acquaintances, you can have a lot of people in your life, and
Yeah.
that's why I think so many people are struggling with loneliness because they might be
Yeah.
surrounded by people, but none of them
Yeah.
that really see them.
Yeah.
And
And that, yeah.
this is why I love the work that you're doing because I think that we're seen through our creativity. We're seen
Hmm.
like I love that
Hmm.
you shared, "Oh my gosh, your heart is dying." Like you need to if you're not being creative in your own way, then you're losing that piece of
Hmm.
your I think this God's gift that he put
Yeah.
inside of you
That's
for a
right. That's
reason.
right. That's right.
And one of the other things going back to because I just am so fascinated by, like you said, that people come to you and they almost feel like I am what I create. They feel like if I'm not creating something great, then I'm
Yeah.
not worthy. Like it comes down to that
Yeah.
worthiness piece.
Yeah.
And I was listening to this podcast the other day, and I don't remember who said it, but they were something around how people feel like we have to almost justify our existence.
Hmm.
How we have to do something instead of
Hmm.
just being, but that's
Hmm.
actually not what we're here to do. So what are your
Yeah.
thoughts around that, especially being a pastor and you're sharing
Yeah.
messages to people every week?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of like a utilitarian model, right? I have to create my value and worth in this life. And what's fascinating to me is in my own journey, discovering my own narratives, because I have all these narratives too, performance narrative, and I've bought into the utilitarian thing in different ways. So, I have those things in different places in me hiding out, and I get to discover them over the course of my life. But one of the things that's fascinating in scripture is the first thing that's ever called holy in the Bible is the Sabbath. So like all this creativity has happened. And then there's this day that ends up being called holy, called Sabbath. And what is that day? It's this day of rest. And Jesus will go on to say that day is not for God, it's for men, it's for you, human, to rest. And God rested, He made you to rest too. And there's a narrative connected to it as well, which is their freedom from slavery in Egypt. And so when they rest, it's a reminder that they're no longer slaves. And in the Christian narrative, things shift a little bit. So in the Hebrew scriptures, it goes, we work and then we rest on the Saturday, the Sabbath day. But after the resurrection of Jesus, we start, Sunday became the first day for Christians. So we start resting in what Jesus has done for us. So what does that mean? That He has given His life up for us, that we're completely forgiven, we're totally loved, and we rest in the grace of that. We don't have to prove anything. We're not going to lose anything. We don't have anything to fear. Like, God is with us. God loves us, and that we're called to work out of that. So that is the posture, So that's what I bring and try to bring to our people. And we talk a lot in our community, our church, about work, and I call it people's creativity. I say it's their creativity is their endless generosity to the world. So like when Jesus says, "Love your neighbor as yourself," the place you have the greatest opportunity to do that is in work, right? Because most of us work 40 hours at least, and most people don't think of it as generosity or creativity, or even that they're loving their neighbors. A lot of times, but your creativity, and that's, as we were saying earlier, that's creating a spreadsheet. And that's, whatever it is you're doing, balancing budgets, vision casting, whatever it is, being a nurse, being a doctor, you are being creative. And you have an endless supply of creativity. So it's really a story, this life, of abundance, not a story of scarcity. And if you really believe the story of abundance, it also helps you to rest. And my mentors and therapists have said, Keith, when you are the most rested is when you're the most creative and the most innovative. Because I get into the hustle mode as an entrepreneur, which I know a lot of people do. Um, and it's like, go, go, go. Cause I have to raise money. That's like the worst. That's when I get into the worst. But it's it's not a good spot for me. Like, the hustle mode is not good. I get more irritable. I'm just like, nobody really cares about anybody. It's not a good space. But when I'm rested, I can feel the love, you know?
Yeah. It reminds me of when you're talking to a salesperson and how you can tell when someone's on if they're trying to meet their quota and you can tell they're so salesy, but then the other guy, it's almost like that's why you want to buy from them because they're so like, take it or leave it,
Mm-hmm.
whatever you want, doesn't matter to me. But like that
Mm-hmm.
energy of I'm good and coming
Mm-hmm.
from that place of abundance. I love that you brought up the Sabbath because I have another book for you, Keith. Matthew's latest book is called Slowing Down to the Speed of Joy.
Oh, cool.
And he has a whole chapter on the Sabbath.
Cool.
So
Love it.
it's an awesome book, so I'll bring you some copies.
Yeah. There's a movie that's fascinating called The Speed of God. And it's about this guy wanting to learn how to like live a present life. And he asked his professor, a guy named Eugene Peterson, where he could go to do that. And he said, well, you're gonna have to go to like Scotland. And so he goes to Scotland to work for this church. He shows up the first day, and he's looking for his office. And the head of the church takes him out and shows him the neighborhood. Like, here's your office. But the whole idea of it, the speed of God, is 3 miles per hour, because that's the speed of walk.
Mm,
That's the speed of walking. And it's just a fascinating story just about that slowing down, and, because that's what we need so bad. I mean, the whole loneliness thing, I can get into the whole loneliness thing. That's another obsession. But the things that are the narratives that have happened in our country, where we continue to choose opportunity over community, right? Um, have really, we're seeing the fruit of how it's really detrimental. We're lonely, lonely people because of it.
yeah. Oh, choosing opportunity over community. That sounds so sad. When before however many years ago, it was definitely the opposite, and people are happier. Well, they were less lonely,
There,
I would assume.
there was way more of a village, put it that way.
Yeah.
Like my friend, who's a pastor on staff with us at the church, he's from Kenya, and we went and did a house visit for this older couple, and I think they had a nurse that stopped by while we were there or something, but they were shut-ins. That's what they call them, shut-ins. And we leave and we get in the car, and he's just mortified. He's like, Keith, this would never happen in my community. This would never happen in Kenya. You don't have people living alone like this. Older people, they live with their families. They're cared for by the families. Like, we don't have homeless people in Kenya. The people, they're cared for by their families. They live in homes with everybody has a place to stay. Um, so it's we got some serious work to do, right? And I love David White. He's been a compass for me during a lot of the stuff that's been going on in our own context here. But he's got this quote where he says, "Culture is changed when a creative minority finds a more beautiful way to live." And that's what we're really trying to lean into.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. All right. Are there any other books or resources that you are loving right now that you turn to when you need some a little
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I don't really read. I get books, but I don't really read them. I just read like the introduction and the first. I have ADD, but I'm also like a big concepts guy, and I'm kind of like, if you can't tell me what you're getting at in the first couple of chapters here. But yeah, I mean, a lot of stuff around the creative pursuit has had a big impact on me. I mean, The Artist's Way is not a new book for me, but it's one that I come back to it. I come back to the ideas a lot. There's a theologian named Rowan Williams, and he's got a book on mystery and creativity that's fascinating to me. I mean, the Matthew Kelly book that you read, that's one in the last 6 months that I've been engaging with quite a bit. So, music is big for me, discovering new music. I was over at a friend's house last night, a guy named Blake Hanley, and I just got to sit in his recording studio with him. It was his birthday, and he's playing me, he played me 4 songs, and he starts playing the first song, and I'm just about to come out of my seat because it was so good. And I feel like I am on the most holy, sacred ground because he's one of my best friends, and I'm getting to see like firsthand his creativity. Like, it's coming out right now, and it's moving my body. And like, that kind of interaction is so, so vital, and it gives so much life. That local, you know?
Ah, I love that. That's why I love and now that I know you love well, I think I knew you like I think everybody loves music, but some people really
Yeah,
love discovering new music more, so
yeah.
I'll send you some stuff because I have a friend of mine who he sends me quite a few songs that I never would have discovered had he not sent them to me. Actually, I have
Yeah.
2 people in my life that send me music, and one of whom has shared some artists with me that there's no way I would ever discovered them. One of them
Mhm.
is The Midnight. It's called
Okay.
and they are so they sound like very 80s, but like very laid back. Anyway, I became like obsessed with them. I listened to their whole album over and over and over.
All right. I
Um,
gotta check them out.
oh yeah, I'll send you my
Yeah.
favorite song that
Yep.
it's called Los Angeles. It's such a great song.
Okay.
Anyway, all right. Keith, we're gonna have you come back on because there's so
Cool.
many topics I feel like you could go into. And I think when it comes to the creative process, I think one of the challenges is so much around just mentally, like, what do we
Mhm.
create? How do we create it? How do we stay
Mhm.
focused? How do we
Yeah.
not listen to what others thinking and stay true to ourselves? But also, you
Yeah.
have to create and share the work and help people find it. There's just so much that goes into all of it.
Yeah.
So it's episodes for days. So we'll have you
Yeah.
come back for sure. But before you go, I always ask my guests the last question, which is what's one activity that we can do
Mhm.
in 10 minutes or less to live a more creative life?
Yeah. I would say take 4 minutes and do some box breathing. You know what that is, right? In for three, you can do 3, 4, 5 seconds, whatever. In, hold, out, hold, In, hold, do that, and then be curious. What am I feeling? Where am I feeling it in my body? What's coming up for me? What's getting stirred in my heart? And then just write about it or hum a melody or draw something because that's getting connected to the fire inside. Okay, I wanted to show you my setup real quick as far as where I'm talking to you right now, just so you can see the desk and the potential for creativity that is surrounding me right now.
Ooh, I
Can I
love
turn the
that.
camera
Okay.
up? So this is I'm in like our Florida room at our house, right? This is the desk that I'm at here with. If you can just see all of the potential for creativity. We got pastels here, we got paints, we got I don't even know what this is, sanding sealer for stuff. There's scrapers and scissors, and these are things my wife creates. She does these little keychains
Oh,
that are
cute.
made out of like these shells that are here locally. And so like all of our friends have these little like fun seashells that um, are around town. It's super cool. But everybody in our family is like creating stuff all the time, and it's to have that cultivated in our family and the permission for it is so fun.
Yes. Oh, it's so needed. And I am so grateful for you being in our community and helping other people to be creative, stay creative, keep creating. And I love that you are collaborating and you're inviting other people to collaborate. And we need people like you who are that connector, who are like, oh, you need to talk to so and let's see what you
Hmm.
can build
Hmm.
together. And it's only from doing that over and over and over that you're going to find the thing that sticks, right? There's going to be things that don't
Yeah.
work. There's going to be things that do, but sometimes the things that do work only happen because of the things that didn't work in the first place.
Yeah. And we get to know each other in the process, and
Yeah.
grateful for you doing the same thing. I mean, lifting these voices and connecting people and inspiring us and encouraging us. So it's really cool to have this platform.
Yeah. Well, we're on the same mission, so we'll
Yeah.
we'll, we'll keep
Yeah.
going.
Love it. Love it.
I hope you enjoyed this episode, and at least one idea or thought is going to help you move your creative project forward, whatever it is that you're going through. I hope there's something that we talked about today that just sparked your curiosity, that got you excited about whatever project you're working on, or maybe push you into a project that you're thinking about working on. That is what this show is about. It's not just about passive listening. I truly want after each of these episodes for you to feel empowered, inspired, and excited to go get to work on something, or to pick up a new book, or to go for a walk, to explore your curiosity, to write more, to write so that you can understand what it is that you're thinking about. Maybe it's an opportunity for you to collaborate with somebody that you've been really enjoying their work, something that pushes you into action. So I hope you got some of that out of today's episode. Thank you so much for being here. And until next time, go create something.